Justice Center Jail Project Committee to order. Any visitors wishing to address this committee about the agenda items only may do so at this time. You'll have 5 minutes.
My name is Linda Noe, 2343 Joe Stevens Road. I've watched the operations of county government for over 20 years, and I've never been more disappointed in the Hamlin County Commission and the county mayor than I am today. My greatest disappointment is the handling, or better put, the mishandling of the jail project. The jail issue has beset the county since at least 2010, and actually prior to that, with the lack of a certified, decent jail. That's the issue. Hamlin County needs a new jail, but we do not need to spend $75 million on an unsafe, multi-story jail that the sheriff tells us he cannot staff, and with an elaborate new justice center. A little history is needed here because I think about half of you were not even here in 2017 and in earlier years. In November 27, Mosley Architects presented options A through K. I bring you just one of those options, option J, which is a 452-bed detention facility with courts and renovation of the existing Justice Center, $37,900,000. Then there were 2019 estimates. And the next thing we know, we're in May of 2020 with the unveiling of a multi-story jail design and totally new Justice Center with a price tag of around $65 million for construction costs. And then, of course, all the money you spent on property and demolition and project management fees and architect fees and bond fees and realtor fees and the Hale property, and still more to come. Jim Hart with CTAS then reported that the staffing is going to more than double, while the sheriff has told you he can't staff the jail he has now. Often overlooked is that the sheriff and jail staff have told you that this multi-story design is less safe for staff and inmates. I could go on and on, but everybody up here already knows, and more of the public is finding out that we have a design that is a money pit to build, is unsafe and unstaffable. During all this, the Commission refused to allow the people to vote on a bond referendum, refused to approve a moratorium to allow just 120 days to review a safer, less expensive, one-level jail. You refused even to give 15 minutes for a presentation by a commissioner and citizens supporting a one-level jail. Instead of considering a one-level jail, we have commissioners throwing papers into the audience and other commissioners accusing citizens of being part of a witch session, and Chairman Shipley violating the constitutional rights of citizens. The whole process has been a sham, an outrage, and a carefully controlled game from the get-go, and it needs to stop now. The citizens of Hamlin County deserve better, the commissioners deserve better. I ask that you not seek bids on the multi-story jail Justice Center until you fully and openly compare the costs, safety, and staffing of the multi-story jail design versus the cost, safety, and staffing of a one-level jail with a total renovation of the Justice Center. As I said at the start, we need a new jail. We do not need to spend $75 million on an unsafe, multi-story jail that the sheriff has said he cannot staff. Please think again about what Charles Curtis said yesterday. Listen to the people. I think a proposal that could save $30 million, maybe just $20 million, maybe $10 million. is a good idea and worth taking 60 to 90 days to look at. Then if you still feel that the multi-story jail is the only way to go and we've got to spend $65 million and the $10 million or so on all the other costs, then it makes more sense after you have looked at this one level. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Ann Horner. I live at 6245 Woodcrest Drive. I have several questions and concerns about the jail that I'm sure by most of your demeanors I will not get answers to. Nevertheless, I'm going to ask them in hopes of making you think. Why are you hell-bent on this monstrosity when there is a safer, more reasonable option? Why would you not listen to Commissioner Neesmith's presentation? But an even better question might be why you have not been good stewards of tax monies over the years and maintained the current jail. Why should you be trusted to maintain a new building? What about that money you claim to make from state inmates? We all know it goes to the general fund instead of a separate jail fund. Why have you spent that money? What have you spent that money on, Mayor Brittain and commissioners? Why don't you address that? It will continue to be a problem. How can those of you who voted to give the mayor his wish on the jail live with your decisions? So many people struggle to pay their taxes, and your job and responsibility is to them. Why don't you speak up for your constituents? We need a jail, but not this one. It won't be safe for employees or inmates. This point has already been well made. Are you possibly being pressured to push this through? Or are you benefiting by going along with it? Legitimate questions considering circumstances. Your reputations are at stake on this one. Taxes must be raised, so why don't you make the best decision for the people of Hamlin County, instead of helping the mayor check things off his wish list? Mayor Brittain, why don't you try to consider the safest, most affordable option instead of causing a greater burden on the people of the county? I forget, you seem to enjoy enslaving us in so many ways. Like some commissioners, you fooled the people, including myself, into thinking you were the conservative option to vote for. What a crock. It's all about power and money, and look what I did. You aren't fooling me anymore. I hope you can live with yourselves while the poor and elderly struggle to pay for your dream. I hope you can live with yourselves when someone dies in a medical emergency or altercation because of understaffing and stairs to climb. Why can't you see? Why don't you care? Why won't you look at other options? Pride and arrogance sure looks that way as time goes on. I pray you'll consider a change before it's too late.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Emily Reitnauer, 1200 West 6th North Street, and I am coming to follow up on the petition that I submitted to you all several months ago about halting the jail. And part of the reasons for that is that our county officials are keeping people in jail in an unconstitutional way. I apologize, I'm a little flustered. My car battery died, so I just barely squeaked in. But you all might have heard that the lawsuit against the county has been upheld, and a preliminary injunction has been upheld by Judge Corker in Greenville. And this is it. I encourage you all to read it online. It found that we, the county, the sheriff and the Judge Collins and clerks are engaging in unconstitutional practices by keeping people in jail before their trial and denying them an individualized bail hearing. And the judge requires that people have an individualized bail hearing going forward. The sheriff and the judge have not, to my knowledge, made forward motion yet, but they will have to. The Tribune has not covered this story adequately, but other newspapers will, including the Knoxville News Sentinel, the Tennessean, and probably National. Our county is becoming infamous for our unjust and unconstitutional pretrial practices. And I know that you all are not judges and lawyers, and there is only so much you can do. But one of the things that you can do is not build a huge new jail to keep people in when we are already keeping too many people in jail. Approximately 50% of people in the jail currently will probably be released because of this order. So if that's the case, that throws off all of your professional projections that you had done for what the need for the new jail will be. And you could probably end it all if you would institute pretrial support programs that have been recommended to the county, and then the judge would have something to do. Right now, they're afraid that they're going to have to be in court 24/7. The Greenville judge said that that argument was a sky is falling argument and completely dismissed it as ridiculous, so that's not going to stand. And if the Greenville judge does come down and say, you are not complying with my order, and I'm going to give you a program that will probably end up being a lot more expensive for the county in the long run, so now you have an opportunity to craft a pretrial program that works and that is not as expensive as something the federal judge might insist that you do. I know part of the impetus for building this jail today or in the next 2 years is because you're afraid of a federal judge getting in trouble with a federal judge. Well, we have gotten in trouble with a federal judge already, and I respectfully want to point out that I do not think you are focusing on the correct problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Gwen Holden, 8150 West Point Drive. I'm a taxpayer, you're a taxpayer. I just don't think that we need to spend $75 million for a jail. I think you can do it for less. And, like Mr. Neesmith did, give you a referendum, want to talk about it for 15 minutes, and see what let him do that. I don't think you care what the citizens think. But I tell you what, I believe it's going to come back to get you, because you can't do people like that and get by with it. It's going to cost you as well as it's going to cost me. And it may cost you more, because you all are making the decisions.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Tony Strazzillo, 609 East Louise Avenue. I'm here to speak tonight about this jail. Not just the government sector, but the private sector is having an extremely difficult time finding good labor. Everywhere you go, you see signs, more signs that say help wanted, now hiring, than sale signs. It's almost ridiculous. How do you all expect to be able to put that many government employees onto a development that's just going to be overwhelming in comparison to what we even have? Why are we even looking to build a jail that's going to hold so many inmates? Are you guys that afraid that the police system is doing that horrible of a job, or that's the type of people you're inviting into this area, is the criminals and the people that need to be locked up? You think that we need that many places for inmates? It's ridiculous. Think about that. We need to do something to solve the problem with the crime rate, if that's what the issue is. I don't see that we need to have a facility of that size, of that demeanor. We need to figure out what we need to do today to start diminishing the amount of inmates that we have, to bring people in here. I saw a survey that Hamlin County put out that was online, and I tried to fill it out, and it booted me out at the end. And one of the things was, what do I think invites people into Hamlin County to want to move here? I came from South Florida. Listen, I'm ready to get out. This place is horrible. It's so behind on its times. nothing inviting here, nothing for a family to do. Try to go fishing and there's cliffs everywhere. There's not even a place to go fishing with a family. You can't invite people here if there's not things for families to do. You say, well, sports. Great, my kids played sports for 3 years. And then there wasn't enough coaches. So they couldn't play for the following year. Then the following year they couldn't play again. You can't even find coaches and you want to find employees. You all need to step back because when this place is built and you can't run it, it's just going to be ran to the ground. You're going to have mediocre employees, you're going to have more lawsuits, you're going to have the same problems. You're not solving any issues by storing more inmates. What is that, for funding? You all really need to step back and think about this. This is today. I know your all's generation is a little bit older, but listen, I got kids. I'm 40. You know, I would love to stay here. I didn't move just to move. I moved for a place where I thought, hey, I'd be able to take my kids out fishing, be able to go out four-wheeling, dirt biking, hang out, trails. That stuff's not here. Listen, the weather is horrible 5 months out of the year. It rains, it's cold. They're not even cold enough to snow and go out snowboarding. It shuts down. I feel like my kids are losing 4 months every year out of their life because they're stuck inside of a house because there's nothing else to do. But you're worried about spending money for criminals. Is it because you're afraid of this generation and they ain't got nothing to do and they're harbored up into places doing drugs and stuff and not being able to prosper and thrive? We want to thrive in community. We don't want to jail people, have them on probation and papers. That's not what we want. We really need to consider. We can't afford that. There's a lot of people that can't afford to live as it is, and you want them to pay more. Please, reconsider. Think about this. We don't want issues down the road because we want to do something today. Let's figure out what we can do now and maybe grow in 5 years if need be. But if the crime rate is bad in 5 years, listen, all these police that are cooped up everywhere, I drive down the street and there are these little cubby holes behind buildings, in the school parking lot, here and there, not even where people can see. What are they doing on private property anyways? They're not allowed to be on private property. They need to be out visible where people could see. I've got 20 seconds left. Listen, my wife was told to move and to leave into another room. There's no reason that we can't fit more people over here. This COVID crap is ridiculous. All of you are less than 6 feet apart. This is crazy. Nobody in here but a couple of people have masks on. Nobody people downstairs. This is ridiculous. We need to figure this out.
Anyone else wish to speak? If not, we'll move forward.
My wife would love to, but she's out there. Oh.
You have my seat, and I'll step back.
No, go ahead, sir. No, go ahead. I appreciate it.
Item 3A, old business, there is none. New business, 4A, presentation of the new Justice Center Jail, Brittain Ten from Mosley Architects.
Commissioners, how y'all doing? Thank y'all for having us tonight. Appreciate it. Good to see you all again. I've been asked to update you guys on the progress of the project and recap some of the design, so refamiliarize everyone with it and kind of walk through. Does this work for you? Let's go ahead and advance to the agenda. Put together the agenda here that what we're going to go over this evening. A project overview will be the first thing that I will go over with you guys. Then we're going to talk about operations and some safety, staff safety strategies that we developed as part of the project. I'm going to share with you the project imagery that most of you have already seen all that again, but I'm just going to bring it back to your memory. We're going to go over some energy efficiency strategies that are part of the project. And we're gonna go over the status of where we are, of the review and approval process, and then we're gonna go over next steps. Tricia. So project overview is first. Yeah, go ahead and advance it one more time. Just to recap, this is the site plan for the project, and we'll orient you here. This is the existing Justice Center here. Which way is most everybody looking? Maybe I should orient it so most of you are looking. This is the existing Justice Center here. The existing EMS building is here, and the existing Helen Ross McNabb Center is here. The area that you see there, kind of in a brownish orange, is the new building. This is West 3rd North, and this is Jackson Street here. The main entrance, the new entrance, main entrance to the facility will be here. Folks coming to the facility will come, and there's a new parking here for public and visitors. There's a new staff parking lot here, and we're extending the existing staff lot in this area here. Arresting officers and people coming to the facility will come in a secondary entrance. That's the existing exit off onto Jackson Street now, which is here. That will be repurposed as an entrance for arresting officers. They will come in, and they'll come around through a gated entrance here to the back of the facility. There's a vehicle sally port in this location, and all of this area behind the facility here is within the secure fence perimeter of the facility. There's an exit gate here. Both this gate and the gate here are controlled by central control inside the facility, so people can't just come in and out of those gates without the staff giving them access to do so. Just some highlights of the project here. We've got a total on-site of 280 parking spaces, 164 new and 116 existing. Went over the secure perimeter there. We've got secure fencing from the corner of the existing Justice Center around to the new Justice Center here, and then from the back around and up to between the Helen Ross McNabb and the new facility up to West 3rd North, where the gate is here. Inside the fence perimeter, we picked up a few secure judges parking in this area. They have a separate entrance, which is secure. They will come in, they'll park here and come into the building kind of in this knuckle area here between the two, between the detention center and the Justice Center here. There's an elevator and staircase for their access at that point. Like I mentioned, we have separate entrances for vehicles for visitors and public coming to the facility, and staff entrance here. The existing facility, if you recall, this portion of the building is the 4-story detention center. This portion of the building is the 1-story Justice Center. I'll orient you that way because the next slide we'll go through the floor plans one more time. This is the lowest level of the detention portion of the building. Again, 3rd North Street is here, Jackson Street is here. This is the vehicle sally port where arresting officers will come into. The door will close behind them. They can offload their arrestee into the facility. This bluish green area here is booking and intake. There's an array of holding cells, medical areas, so that folks can be medically assessed as they come into the facility. There's property storage in this zone and dress out in this zone. We have strategically located the medical area of the building kind of in this grayish area, if you will, where I'm circling there. It's in proximity to the booking and intake area, but it's also in proximity to the elevators that take you up and down in the facility, which are located kind of right here. This is the main corridor, which kind of leads back around to some court holding on this level. There's an elevator here that will, this is pure elevator strictly for inmate movement. That will take them up to the court levels on level 1 of this portion of the building. This brownish gray area here is kitchen and laundry facilities. There's a loading dock in this area of the building. And this kind of pinkish area here is a work release dorm. We wound up with 37 beds in the work release dorm. They have their own entrance in and out of the facility here, so they don't commingle with inmates in other parts of the facility. If you recall, we talked about that several months ago. Some highlights, I kind of went through most of that. Probably since the last time we spoke, one thing in kind of reaction to the COVID situation that's come about in our country, we did add some negative pressure cells in the medical area. Those are located here, so if you have an infectious issue in your inmate population, you have some ability to manage that until, you know, those infected inmates need to be transported elsewhere. That's kind of in this zone here. I mentioned court holding area and loading dock, so I think that's kind of that on the lowest level. If you don't mind going up to the next level, Trish. Okay, this is the first floor level, and this portion of the building here is the first floor of housing. The area that we were just looking at, the booking intake kitchen area, are directly below this portion of the building. This portion of the building is the one-story court and admin portion of the building. Overall, and I should say, over the housing portion of the building, there's a mezzanine as well. Each one of these two larger pods here have 39 beds. The two smaller pods that you see there have 19 beds each. And that's replicated on the levels 2 and level 3 as we move up into the building. The overall project, square footage is roughly 199,000 square feet. We've incorporated 3 courtrooms, as you recall, into the design. Clerk of court space is along this bar here. Community services is here in the yellowish color there. And jail administrative suite is in the light blue here. If you recall, and I'll just remind you guys that we talked about very early on 3 distinct paths in the design of the project. We want to make sure that the public is separate from staff, and staff and public are separate from judicial movement. That's the 3 and inmate movement. That was the 3 paths there. Public, inmate movement, and judicial staff. So if you recall, the main public entrance to the facility is here. Everyone coming to the facility will go through a checkpoint and screening station at this location. And the public is allowed to go kind of down this main corridor here. They can access the clerk of court zone. They can access the courtrooms. Video visitation we've located off that main lobby. There's public restrooms here, and attorneys have access to inmates, inmate visitation area off that main corridor. So we've kept the public main movement to this bluish zone of the building here. Judicial movement, we'll talk about, like I mentioned on the site plan, there's some secure judges parking kind of off the end of the building here. Judges can come in through a door. There's an elevator and stair here that will bring them up to the judicial corridor, kind of behind the courtrooms. The judges' offices and administrative suites are kind of located behind the courtrooms. So judges coming to court would come in from the back side of the courtrooms, from their judicial corridor, whereas the public would come in the front off the public corridor. So we separated those 2 movement paths. And the third movement path is inmate movement path, which you want to keep separate as well. The area here in green between the 2 courtrooms is inmate holding. If you recall, on the lower level, I mentioned we had some court holding on the lowest level, and there was an elevator on that level that brought you up to an elevator here in the greenish zone there. So, and inmates could be held on the lowest level. They could be held on this level. Those inmates going to court, that is. And then they are fed into the courtrooms via doors from the left and right here going in from that holding area. So we kept inmate movement separate from those other 2. So all 3, those 3 distinct paths are a very important safety feature of the design that we talked about and discussed early on, and we've kept that consistent through the entire design process. I've got an animation of the courtroom. We can play that at the end if you guys want to see that. We've had a number of meetings, number of conversations over the course of the project with all of the judges. We've developed an animation of the courtroom so they kind of could see what the courtroom looked like, the finishes. The judge could actually sit behind the bench and kind of see what they see. You could go sit in the jury box and see what a juror would see. You could sit in the public gallery and see what they would see. So we've had number of in-depth conversations with the judges. I think they're very excited about the courtrooms that we've got developed into the project. Just a couple of highlights of the 3 courtrooms there. Courtroom A is for general sessions and juvenile courts. Gallery seating is the public seating area. It's sized for approximately 140 seats there. Courtroom B is for general sessions Division I courts, and the gallery seating is sized for 110. And courtroom C is the criminal and circuit court. That courtroom is the one that's modeled here. That's the jury courtroom, and the public gallery seating area there is 156 seats. And again, we can show that animation at the end if you guys want to see that. So let's see what's going on there. Moving up to levels 2 and 3, these 2 floors of housing are pretty much identical. Again, it's the same configuration, kind of a wagon wheel, if you're familiar with that term. There's a centralized elevated control room kind of in the center where you see this diamond area. Staff are able to access that control room via a stair there. They have good line of sight down into each of the housing pods. They can see all the way through the housing pod, and they can see the outdoor rec space beyond. There's the bed count and the core size. Overall, we're at 121 beds total in the design for the facility. The core of the facility, things like your laundry, your kitchen, those are what we consider core spaces. Overall, it's sized for about 650 there. And there's your breakdown of your bed count. We have had, like we met with the court folks and county staff, we've had a lot of conversations with county maintenance through this design process. One of the big drivers, not only from a safety perspective, but also from a maintenance perspective, was this rear chase design. All of these housing pods, you'll see kind of a bar behind the holding cells there. That's maintenance chase. Maintenance can access everything they need to access behind those cells without ever having to go into the housing pod. There may be occasion where something's in the housing pod they still have to go in there for, but the primary servicing that they would have to do would be from the rear chase. It's better for the maintenance staff so that they don't have to, and it's better for officer safety and inmate safety too, because you don't have that mixing of maintenance staff bringing ladders and tools and things like that on a continuous basis into the day rooms of the housing pods. Likewise, we've had a number of conversations on the finishes through those meetings with maintenance staff and county staff. We've provided very durable finishes. They're not over the top. They're not overly expensive finishes. Matter of fact, in the holding areas, we're talking about painted CMU block walls and finished concrete floors is what we're talking about in the inmate area. So it's meant to be more durable and more maintenance resistant finishes, and therefore we're not spending a whole lot of money on those finishes. Now we do have a little bit nicer finishes in the public areas of the building, but that's because they're also very durable finishes, and this building's meant to last you guys for 50 years. And it's a 50-year building, and you want the maintenance to not have issues with finishes in public zones of the building too. So they're all meant to be very durable, easily cleanable, and easily maintainable. Let's talk a little bit about operations and staff safety. Some of the strategies that we've incorporated into design. Most of you are probably familiar with the pictures here that I'm showing. This is pictures of another facility, but the design is very similar to your facility. What you see on top here is the elevated control room, and you see through the windows beyond the housing pod below. Officers would be in this elevated control room, and they have full line of sight, like I mentioned before, into the day room below. They can see beyond into the rec yard that you kind of see beyond, and so it's very it's very good from an officer safety standpoint, because it's kind of an indirect supervision. Officers are not in the housing pod in a direct supervision with the inmates constantly, so it's better for staff safety from that perspective. One of the things that we've done in this design is intentionally we are limiting the movement of inmates. We have, rec yards at each housing pod. So, if an inmate's in a housing pod, they don't have to go elsewhere in the facility when it's time for their recreation. They can stay within that housing pod. Each level of housing, we've included a medical triage area. So if there's a situation, the nurse and the medical staff would come up to that floor to the medical triage area rather than the inmates going down constantly and moving. That is officer safety. It reduces the amount of staff you have to have for moving inmates and things of that nature. We have program space on each floor level. So programs, again, stay on the housing level. The whole idea is that you're limiting the movement of inmates. They're not having to have sheriff staff, detention staff move them throughout the facility and go to these things. So basically what I'm saying is inmates stay on that floor. Unless it's a major medical issue that they have to go to medical or even removed from the facility, or they're going to court, they pretty much stay on that housing level that they're assigned to. I mentioned the elevated control rooms earlier. I won't go back over that. But one thing, and I think one benefit of having a multi-story design is each floor really becomes a classification type. It allows the detention staff to classify the inmate population better, because in essence, each floor becomes its own miniature jail, if you will. We've talked about strategies of maybe the third floor becomes your entire female population. So you're not mixing males and females on the same floor. You can isolate them, if you will, on the floor level of the building. So in a way, having a multi-story facility is better for detention classification purposes. Some images, you guys have seen all of these before. This is the main entrance, the main public entrance to the facility. We designed this building, it's not over the top, but it is a very dignified civic presence. We were very mindful, knowing where this building was going to be placed, its proximity to the Rose Center, its proximity to the historic courthouse that we're in. So it's meant to be fit within the context of the community, but it's also meant to give that very dignified civic presence and that sense of justice that you get from courthouses in historic courthouses, especially. Trish, if you will. This is a view looking back. This is the multi-story detention facility. We're still standing in the public and staff parking lot. This is the vehicle sally port that I mentioned when we were going through the site plan. Interior-wise, this is a view that you've seen before of the public lobby. We've tweaked the finishes a little bit since this rendering, and I haven't updated, sorry about that. We've reduced the amount of windows, and we've eliminated the wood up high there to, again, cut back on some savings for the county, but still have a nice facility. This is going to be a very high volume public space. People are going to be coming and going quite a bit in this, so it's sized appropriately for all that movement of people, if you will. Next picture, if you will. This is a new image that you guys have not seen, that public corridor that I made mention of. You can see kind of the entrances off to the left-hand side of where the courtrooms are. It's a little bit wider corridor because, again, there's going to be a lot of people moving back and forth. It's oversized. You might be able to put some seating out there in front of the courtrooms that folks can wait as they come in and out of court. So it's meant to be a very high traffic area, very durable finishes, and we capture some daylight, so it's a very nice, inviting, pleasing space. Some energy strategies and performance numbers. I just highlighted here some of the strategies that we've been looking at in this design and what we've incorporated in the design. I won't go through all of this in detail, but I will point out a few things, like from the architectural perspective, we're going with a reflective roofing membrane. In other words, it's not the old dark black roofing membrane that absorbs rays from the sun. It's a white membrane, so it reflects. It improves your HVAC system in the facility performance. Reflective interior surfaces, it allows the natural light to bounce better and make the space feel more inviting, more light and airy. We've incorporated a number of mechanical and electrical strategies. We've got high efficiency HVAC systems. I'll go over some of the numbers in a moment here, so you guys can see some of the numbers that we've got. LED lighting throughout the facility, both interior and exterior lighting is all LED. We've installed, designed for installing occupancy sensors in the staff areas, so that controls your light, your energy use. When staff areas aren't occupied at nighttime and nobody's in that office, occupancy sensor will cut off that light, so you're saving energy. So it's better in the long run, it's better for maintenance, it's better for the longevity of the facility. One thing, I'll go into this a little bit in the next slide, is the roof we've designed to be solar PV ready. Trish, if you will, I'll go to that next slide. We're not installing solar panels on the building as part of the project, but the building is, we've identified a couple of opportunities that if the county ever chooses to add solar panels to the facility, we've identified a couple of spaces that could happen. And we've kind of run some quick numbers to just kind of look at what that would do for the county if that were to ever happen. And these are based on today's technology. So we know that solar energy is one of those things that's an ever-evolving technology. Things are always being improved. So based on today's technology, if you were to fill these blue zones that I've identified here with solar PV panels, you could expect to generate somewhere between 5 and 10% of the building's consumption, energy consumption. That's not a lot, but again, with improvements in technology, that number should grow in the future if the county ever chooses to do that. And one more slide on energy. We did an analysis of the heat and air portion of the design. What we have proposed in the project, basically over a baseline code compliant minimum building, what we have designed is we expect to perform at least 10% better. So you should have a 10% reduction in your energy costs over a baseline code compliant facility. Part of that number, there's about $196,000 in first cost that's in the design to achieve that. But what we're expecting is about a $76,000 a year savings on your energy or your annual energy usage and your maintenance. So that pays for itself roughly in 2.5 years. So basically, the first cost number of that, almost $200,000, which is minimal, add to the project, it'll pay for itself roughly in the energy savings within 2.5 years there. So again, that was a quick analysis we did, but the mayor asked me to do that and share with you guys so that you could see that. I think that was important for you guys to see. Sure. Where we are, status of the reviews and approval on the project. This is all the approvals that we have to go through with reviewing agencies. I've broken them down into site plan reviews and building reviews. As you will see, we are only lacking one with the sewer, the TDEC sewer. We are expecting any day now, sometime in the month of December, we should expect to see approval from them for that. Where we are with the building, these are the three agencies, Tennessee Corrections Institute, the State Fire Marshal's Office, and the City Building Permit. We have already submitted once already to both Tennessee Corrections Institute and the State Fire Marshal's Office, that both those agencies have made comments. We are currently in the process of responding to those comments. and we should be resubmitting to them late this week, early next week. So we fully expect the month of December to have approval from those agencies to move forward. And we expect at the same time I resubmit to TCI and State Fire Marshal's Office, we're going to submit to City of Morristown for the building permits. So we fully expect that we should wrap up all of our approvals by the end of the month. Trish, you will. And so next steps on the project. I put this together basically just to put out the targets and target milestones of where we think the next steps are. I believe we are coming to you guys tonight for approval to proceed with bidding the project. So if we're successful, we should have that was targeted for this month. Following that, if we're successful with getting that approval, we'll be ready to advertise for bid. We expect that to happen in the month of January. And we'll be able to receive bids towards the end of February, and then we should be able to award the project in the month of March. If we're successful with that track, we expect construction to begin roughly in April, and we're time frame of about 24 months to build this project, so owner occupancy would be roughly in April of 2023. I think Tony, you want to come up and we can go through numbers if you want to do that. If there's any questions on anything that I can answer before we get into that,
I have a couple questions.
Sure. Yes, sir.
How common of a design is that?
I would say it's very common.
Have you built more of those in the state of Tennessee or around the area or
We
anywhere?
built a number of them in North and South Carolina.
3 stories?
3 stories.
Well, we've done multi-stories, two of which are fairly recent, one in Guilford County, North Carolina, which is Greensboro area, and one in Charleston, South Carolina, was a multi-story, and
Have you had
a couple of them in
any-
Virginia.
Have you had any issues with, issue on the 3rd floor, or someone from the bottom floor getting up, or they have enough people, either staff up there, or take care of the issues?
None. There haven't been any issues with that. What we do, the concern, I think, the main concern about going up in the air that we always have from an operational and safety standpoint is just the elevator cab itself. And so what we've done is specified that elevator with constant camera coverage on that. And plus, it's an elevator that's detention designed, so the inmates have no control over that elevator. So the thought is when you get in a tighter space, the inmates would want to act out and try to take command over the officer. So we would address that with those type of measures for the inmate process and all that. But from a movement standpoint, it's actually pretty efficient because of the way the radial design is done. It really limits the movement the inmate has to actually walk, that you have to escort the inmate, because you're actually standing in the cab going up. When you get to each housing unit, it's a very short walk because of the radial design.
Right.
If we'd have done them side by side, which a lot of jails have done, it takes up a lot more real estate. You're actually having to physically carry that inmate a longer distance in a horizontal design.
So you're saying a 3-story is better than a flat one? I know it takes up more footprint, but in your opinion, which is the best design?
Well, I think what we have is the best design at this size. If we were building 100, 150, 200 bed jail, I would say a single level operates more efficiently than going up vertically. But given the amount of beds that we have here, I think this is a very safe and secure.
Is there a big savings if you put it flat, or is there a difference in price, or?
That's a great question. I get asked that a lot. I think there's a trade-off. I think they're roughly about the same. I think Tony could probably answer that from a contracting standpoint better than I. But if you have a single level, you have more roof area, but you don't have as many stairs and elevators. So with a vertical design, I have less building perimeter that you have to build. I have less roof area to build, but I've got to pay for the elevators and the stairwells.
Right.
You know, to me, the biggest hassle of a vertical is the maintenance of the elevators. You know, you're going to have that versus a single level that you wouldn't have the maintenance of the elevators. But I think that's how you look at it from that perspective. Cost-wise, I think it's a wash.
So we have a county here on the high side, I don't know what it is right now, 68,000 people, for instance. And we're growing, and I hope we continue to grow, okay? And we're gonna have issues. I mean, the more people you got in the county, the more problems you're gonna have. In 2030, is this building still gonna be a good jail for us?
Yes, because we plan for future expansions with it. We would anticipate, we never recommend something to the county that can't be expanded in this initial construction. I do think the amount of beds and the number of beds that we have will serve you a very long time, but I think down the road, we can't see, we don't have a crystal ball, but most of the facilities, when I started my career, I'm now expanded. So, 35 years later.
So basically what you...
We would expect, and we plan that, how that's...
What I heard you say is basically this type of size of going up's better.
I think with the factors that we have here for this county, I think the county has made, and this group has made the right decision to have it where it is, and the design that we have, I think is, in my professional judgment and opinion, the right choice.
Okay, well, you're the expert, so you should know. All right. And I thank you.
I have a question. Speaking of, you made a comment about staffing being reduced. Jim Hart came and gave us his staffing study. And in his staffing study, he gave us a number, I think it was around 120, and that was if we were at full capacity and everybody had to be there. Knowing that we may not need that many to begin with, but you made a comment about reducing staff. Have you found ways to reduce staff in your design since Jim Hart's study?
No, I don't think that, Mr. Fisher, that was not the intent of my statement. My statement was this design, because of having things like your outdoor rec space, your medical areas, and program spaces on the same floor, this design compared to another design that does not do that, you would have less staff in this design because you're limiting that number of inmate movements. If you have a different design where you have those, maybe like one outdoor rec in the entire facility, well, programmatically, you've got to move those inmates to that outdoor rec, so you've got to have staff to do that. So that was my point.
I just recall Mr. Hart bringing that study to us, and then I specifically asked the question, how much difference would the staff be for a multi-level to a one-story 600-bed facility? And he alluded to the fact that it would be basically the same, maybe 10 less on the one level. Because when you have so many inmates, you have to have that much staff regardless.
Right.
I just think it's something that gets lost in the mix. Everybody, we have some that think that we're less staffed if we built one level. I heard a study that said differently, and do you agree with that?
I tend to agree with that. I mean, the number of beds, the number of inmates that you house in this facility, which is designed for support beds, there's a certain staff level that you've got to have, regardless if it's 621 in a multi-story or 621 on a one-story. I mean, it's very much close within,
One last thing, the pods that were, will all that be constructed on the site?
I'm sorry.
The pods, will they be constructed on site? Will it all be built on site, or is there some being?
So the actual cells where the inmates reside, those are prefabricated cells.
That's what I want to
They're fabricated off-site, they're shipped to the site as a 6-sided box.
Yes.
And then the contractor puts those in place and makes the final connection.
Good deal.
The prefabrication process allows that plant to put the door on, put the bed in, the toilet fixture, paint it, the light fixture, those type of
That was
things.
in Texas or something, wasn't it?
There's multiple, there's multiple places.
All right, that's what I want to confirm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a hearing problem, so you may have already answered my question. What about the wagon wheel approach with pods? I've heard very little discussion about that.
So what I've heard called a wagon wheel, a radial design.
Central facility and halls going out to pods for inmates.
And in essence, this design is very similar to that. In other words, you've got a you've got a centralized control room, staff control room, and then the housing pods are kind of radiating off that central core, kind of in a wagon wheel spoke look, if you will. So, you know, there may be some subtle differences in the facility design that you're describing versus what we designed, but in essence, they're very close.
My concern primarily was the necessary people to run the facility. We're somewhat limited in this area for recruiting people to run a facility of that nature and of that size. And the bigger we make it, the harder it is to run. We're gonna have a real pretty building with nobody but crooks in it.
Understand?
I wasn't referring to the commission.
Mr. Ward, what, did you have a question as far as that I could answer? I'm trying to follow what you were asking me to answer.
I thought I was in the process of asking a question.
Well, maybe I didn't follow you.
I'll let you continue, and maybe I can put it together myself without confusing everybody and me too again.
Okay. I think I think some of the staffing question that we can kind of address a little earlier in that I think by having a multi-story facility, I think, you know, it allows you to staff appropriately. In other words, each floor is, if you will, is kind of a mini jail. And if you need that floor, you staff that floor. If you don't need that floor, you don't staff the floor. And it's pretty, you know, if your inmate population grows, all of a sudden to 621 inmates, well, you got to have staff to reflect that number too. So, you know, that's, I think there's some give and take, and allows this county to grow, the facility to grow with the county's needs, if that answers that question.
I'd like to make a comment at this point. As far as the size of the jail, that was determined by the recommendations of the employees in our current jail. When we first started this project, some of them wanted 900 beds. And so we're winding up with much less than that. But we listened to those individuals, and we have incorporated what, you know, they want.
There was a analysis done very early on in the project for bed projection needs for the next 30 or 40 years. I can't remember off the top of my head what that number was. But yeah, I mean that's where the bed count came from, was that early study.
In this
Go ahead.
In this presentation, you mentioned negative pressure room cells in the lower level, and I had not heard that before. Is that a requirement of TCI?
It is not. We talked about that with them. They recommended it was a good idea to have.
Who is they?
TCI. I'm sorry.
Okay.
TCI. There are two cells in the medical area that have the capability of being negative pressure cells. And basically what that means is you're regulating the mechanical system to put those rooms in negative pressure. So you're not pulling air in from the other surrounding area. So if someone's got an infection, if you will, you don't want to spread that from one space to the other. You want to kind of contain that with the HVAC system in those two cells.
Is that a laminar flow? Does it take laminar flow to make that happen?
I'm not an engineer. I don't know, dude. I'm sorry about that.
Just curious as to what the cost is of that, because that's the first time that I've heard that.
It's negligible, I would say, with what we've already designed for the building. We were able to just easily add that as part of what we already designed. And again, it developed through kind of a reaction to the current situation we've been facing with this year, and discussions with county staff and TCI. They thought it was a good idea to have that for future needs.
Well, we were doing this prior to COVID with negative pressures. Sometimes TB was a big concern prior. Any kind of communicable disease, it's in your interest to be able, until those inmates affected can get out of that facility to a hospital, you need to protect the rest of your population from outbreak. And so it's just more on everybody's mind now of some of those strategies. I will say we have had some in-depth discussion about COVID strategies and how that may affect the design of the building, or should it. And we've implemented some common sense measures, screen, where you interact with the reception and that sort of thing. We've also, Todd, on the operations side, has identified potentially some CARES Act benefit to introduce maybe a body scanner, which we would have wanted to have anyway, that's actually paid for through that program that exists now. And this is an expensive piece of equipment that really helps safety and security when you're processing a new inmate. Having those electronic body scanners like what you go through at the airport, it's over $150,000 device. We found a way to apply for that money, so it's no cost to the county to have that. So we've been thinking about those type of things, and to the extent that COVID has created opportunity that we can take advantage of to the benefit of the county, we've done that. So.
Did you have a question? I'm sorry, I thought it was yes, sir.
My concern is still the ability to get qualified people in to service a facility of this type. We've got a gentleman up here that's quite well versed in it. He's, I'm not even exactly sure what your title is anymore, but if I had a jail question, he's the one I'd go to. Are we going to be able to hire and train the people to adequately run this facility if we build it the size you're discussing?
You got to that.
You want me to answer that? I think, the new facility isn't going to solve all our hiring, issues, but it will attract a lot more people just because of the design that we've figured out with Mosley and PCI. One of the problems we have now is our jail is so dangerous because the design itself, that we hire people and a day or two later, they're walking out the door and saying, no way I'm working here, it's too dangerous. And that's one of our big issues. And I think a facility like they've designed will attract employees to a safe environment, a newer design where they know they're going to be safe, and it's going to be safer for the inmates. I mean, the jail we have now is very dangerous for inmates as well as the staff. And I'm not saying that's going to solve all our hiring issues, but I think it's going to definitely attract a lot more people that want to do this job compared to what we have now.
Now, we hired 8 people at the end of the year. How many we got left?
Well, we have 6 right now.
6.
You still got 6?
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
I don't know.
That's better than the hiring group before.
Yeah, we've had before, we've hired 5 or 6, and we're lucky if we have 2 at the end of the month or so, because like I said, it's the design of that facility drives that. I mean, we've had people literally go on break and never come back.
Keep up the good work.
Any other questions about the design that I can answer before we kind of move into the next portion of the meeting?
Hey, Brian, just one question. Talk a little bit about how the design would help prevent, say, the second floor from flooding the first floor, or how that's been done.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Mayor. Like I was saying earlier, in a number of conversations we had with county maintenance staff, one of the big concerns was because it's a multi-facility, they were very, and the detention staff was worried about this too, about inmates being able to flood the housing area and that trickling its way down to the floors below, if you will. So to remedy that, and we've had a number of conversations, and this was the right solutions, we think, there's kind of a two-pronged approach to that. One, we've added floor drains in a lot of places. The rear plumbing chase behind the cells has floor drains. The day room out in front of the cells has floor drains. And then actually, because some of TCI's requirements, there's several quarters that they asked us to add floor drains in as well. So we have floor drains in a number of places, but another portion of that strategy is there is a water control system in the building. An officer in the control room, if you've got an inmate acting up in this pod, has the ability to shut off the water to a run of cells. So if you've got a toilet that's backed up because somebody's flushed a sheet or tried to flush a uniform or something like that, you can control that water flow so that, you know, limits the amount of water that would escape until maintenance can get there and do something about it. So the officers have that as built in to control as the building. Does that help? Okay. Anything else I can answer? Well, you come up and hit me on this?
How you doing? I wanted to update you, see where we are on budget and our target. There's going to be an ask come out to proceed with bidding, and another ask to proceed with qualified contractors. Anyway, I want to present what we're trying to do to contain our budget and keep it within what we've been designated as our funding. We ran, Burwell Construction ran an independent control estimate, and at the same time, Mosley ran one with METS, METS Consulting Services, who is also an estimator. And we were very, very tight on our estimates together, and we reconciled them. We realized that we had a concern of our budget. And then, so we went and had several meetings with TCI, conferencing back and forth with Brian, with Mosley, and I, and our people in our post trying to outline how we can achieve our bid target. Our bid target needs to be somewhere between $61 and $63 million. On top of that, we need a contingency, somewhere around $1 million, an owner's contingency that we can do. So the way we are going to try to achieve this, and then let me tell you this, if you've got friends in the city, we just completed a bid process with that major project, and it came in about 15% below the control estimate, and about 12% below our budget. So there's hope. It's a good bid market right now, and that's what we're anticipating. We've had, like I said, several meetings trying to attain those ways of getting to that target number. We met with the county, we met with the Tennessee Correctional Institute, and a couple of other 3 people that will help make suggestions. We had a pretty lengthy session with TCI and Brian came up with some ways of really changing material selections and that's appropriate to the facility, and also that are good ideas from TCI. They also suggested some things. So we're going to also incorporate some ideas like alternates, and there'll be additive alternates. We did this similarly with the community center where we had alternates, and that way you get to choose how much money we spend. So as we bid this project, you'll get to see the base bid and these alternates, and when we take the alternates that will make sense, it gets to our target numbers and our budget. So that'll be up to you. We'll come back to you and say, this is what we have, this is what your budget is, this is what we recommend. And maybe in this, so I wouldn't stumble too much. Now we're going to talk about the bid process. So right now, we're out soliciting and received back some pre-qualifications from interesting party. I think I contacted about a dozen major contractors in the region, and I think Mosley did the same thing when we kind of compared notes when we went out and solicited for these qualification statements. We have 5 that's replied. They just came in, so I haven't read through those 196 pages of qualifications, but I intend to do that over the weekend. And so we'll get that back out and see what how those qualifications look. So that's the second ask. We're going to ask you, can we proceed with the pre-qualification process? And and allow only qualified bidders that Mosley deems as qualified to bid the project. It makes your project better. It still allows you to have competitive bids amongst like contractors, qualified contractors, and that increases your quality right off the bat. So we took a look at the bid process. Is it advantageous to separate certain packages to go and do a grading package, for example, a grading package versus a building package? And with the way this jail is designed, in the end, we felt like that it was the same. It was an advantage to you, less risk to you to have that all in one package, because there's so much with the site that you have to go against a retaining wall and coordinate that, and that we just thought it was an advantage to split it just one package and keep track. Now, there may be some things like owner's purchase materials, we're still exploring that, making sure that we can do that for some savings and some equipment that may be like Dan alluded to, you know, he may be able to get you a body scanner as some sort of credit and save that. But we're still exploring that area too to help manage that budget. You know, in the bid process will be a lump sum bid. We'll take bids, it'll be a public bid only among the qualified bidders. You'll see a base bid, and then you'll say, you know, 3, 4, 5 alternates, whatever we deem as appropriate. And then at that point in time, we'll come back to you. We'll have that all outlined. Mosley and I both will check out, make sure insurance is in order, bonding companies are AAA best rated, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll write you a letter of recommendation, and then you can act on it at the end and choose those alternates based on our budget. And again, he told you the construction was is scheduled to begin in springtime, which is the perfect time to start this project. And I think that's all I have. If you have any questions?
Yeah. So you're saying to us that right now is a good time to bid a project?
Yes.
And to market it, and then the bidding market looks real good? Okay.
You have 5 on the first reading of those 5 qualified contractors, you got 5 qualified contractors. I have experience with the ones that Mosley doesn't, and Mosley has experience on a couple that I'm not experienced with. Well,
Okay,
we kind of had a backseat meeting here in the Baptist church. We were kind of compared out. We've got some good qualified contractors that's interested in the project.
Could you elaborate, please, on, you said the bid target was 61 to 63 million. Does that mean you expect our bids to come in between that, or are you still expecting, like the city had a 12% budget decrease? I'm just curious,
I'm always taking the dark side of the thing, so I don't want to say there's going to be a 12% savings. So
No, I understand.
I'm very concerned with the control estimates we have. I'm very concerned with where we need to get to, and that's how come we're taking these other steps. Because we have to, we'll have to manage this process to make sure that we have competitive bids, and we'll have to make sure that we don't get elaborate, and the alternates have got to be to where we can get down to it. If it does come in 12% under, is there a way to get there while it still gives you a functional jail, the Justice Center? So,
we want to stay away from that.
it's hopeful, but it is it's a concern. The budget's concerned, so.
But the only way that we're going to really know the cost of this project is to bid it out.
Put it out to bid.
And then we have the option of either accepting that bid or rejecting the bid and taking the scissors to the project and start cutting. So, I mean, everything else right now is going to be an estimate. We have no idea until we bid the project out. Then when it comes back, then it falls back to us to make a decision at that point.
Yes, sir. Any other questions?
No other questions? Item 4B, recommendation to commission to accept bids to construct the project. County Mayor.
Commission's heard the presentation of what the design is and what has gone into the last 9 months of, really more than 9 months of work by the design team. Not only Mosley's people and Brian and his folks, but also our staff. Spent a lot of time with the jail administration and they reviewed the plans, as well as TCI, as well as the clerk's office and the judges and community service folks. They've all been involved in reviewing the plans. We think that we've met needs, not necessarily wants. We think that we've met the needs that the different departments have, not just now, but in the future. And I'm pleased with what we've come up with, and it's my recommendation that we bid the project and move forward and bid it using the qualified contractors method with the 5 contractors that have submitted their qualifications. They're still being reviewed, but on first blush, all of them are highly qualified contractors that have done comparable work as our project. But that's my recommendation to the commission.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to bid the project and use qualified.
So moved. I'll make that recommendation.
Motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Have a second. Call the vote.
Jeff Baker,
No.
Eileen Arnline,
Yes.
Chris Cutshaw,
Aye.
Randy DeBoard,
Yes.
Thomas Doty,
Yes.
Tim Goins,
Aye.
Bobby Hahn,
Aye.
Tim Horner,
Yes.
Wayne Neesmith,
No.
Mike Reed,
Yes.
Howard Shipley,
Yes.
Jim Stepp,
Yes.
Taylor Ward.
No.
3 no. 10 yes, motion passes.
Motion passes. Item 5A, items of interest, no action necessary, and this is all I have. And this meeting will be adjourned.